Hello, everybody. Firstly, I want to say a big thank you to Amy and Tasha for setting this up and running this. They're going to be running through the Community Fund website for us. We'll take about 15 minutes just having a quick look through the website. And I think looking at the questions, that should answer a good proportion of the questions that you had. But as I said, we'll have a opportunity to ask lots of questions at the end. If you've got any that pop up as we're going through it, pop them into the chat and we'll go through those after we've run through the questions. So this is the sort of like the landing page. If you Googled National Lottery Community Fund funding, you'd end up on a page like this. You can see that there are a few different options you've got here. The general ones that people use is applying for under £10,000, which is the awards for all money, and that might be the size of funding that some of you are looking at. And then there's the applying for above £10,000, which might be the size that others are interested in. The funding criteria are very similar between the two. So I'm going to take you through the reaching communities, because that's as a local funding officer, that's what I specifically work with. But just to be really clear that the funding criteria are the same for the two. You just obviously have to do a little bit less for when you're applying for under £10,000. So if we could just click on that arrow next to the apply for above 10,000.
Sorry, just want to check that everyone can see that, because I think there was an issue with it.
I can see thumbs up.
Yeah, brilliant.
And then if we scroll down there, and we can see that there's a button for each of the different countries. So the programs and the funding criteria are slightly different for the different countries. So if we click on England and then scroll down. So these are the funds that we've got open for above £10,000. You can see there's one there called Partnerships, which is effectively reaching communities, but it's if you're coming in for a group of organisations. But if we just click on reaching communities, again, the criteria are very similar for the partnerships. So if we just spend a little bit of time reading through this first bit, because this is really where we start telling you the things that we're looking for. So I will go through it almost line by line. So we are looking for organisations that work with their community, and by community that can be people living in the same area, or it can be people with similar interests or life experiences. So it doesn't have to be a geographical region that we are talking about by community. We're here to support communities, and when we say we're here to support communities, I don't know if people are aware, but the lottery was set up by an Act of Parliament. The Arts Council, the Sports Council, all of there's 12 funders that distribute those lottery funds. The percentage that we get and what we can give it out for is actually set by an Act of Parliament. So we have a little bit of leeway where we can look at how we give that out and where we specifically focus our time. But we are the community funder, as our name says, so we are looking at handing things out for community and for communities to do. So if you were looking at a sports project, for it to come to us, it would have to be the community. There would have to be a community focus on it, rather than it being a sports focus. If it was a sports focus, it would go to Sports England. So the next sentence there, a few people were asking about cost of living increases, and we can see there that it is specifically stating that we can fund things that are mitigating the impact of the cost of living, and we're still supporting communities to rebuild and grow after the COVID pandemic. And then the three bullet points under there, these are our main funding criteria. They are the same for Awards for All, they're the same for the partnerships, and this is building strong relationships in and across communities. So again, that can be a geographic community or a community of interest. Improving the places and spaces that matter to communities, and helping people to reach their potential by supporting them at the earliest stage. So for Awards for All, you'd be looking to talk to one of those. If you're coming in to us for a sort of a smaller amount of money, then again, you'd be looking to talk to one of those. If you were coming in for a very large amount of money, then you'd probably be looking to talk to two of those or three of those, or at least one incredibly well. So it is a proportionate thing, but they're the things that you really need in an application to be able to explain to us. And I'm going through the reaching communities here. This is the same with any funder. They all have things that they are able to fund. So do have a really good read of their websites, have a read of whatever promotional materials they put out, and understand what it is that they can fund. Because if your project is not aligned, or your application doesn't identify how your project is aligned, then they just won't be able to fund you. So if we can scroll down a little bit. So you can expect us to be flexible and responsive to the community needs. We used to be a lot, I don't know if people have memories of when we had application process, it was a lot more rigorous. You told us what you were going to do, and we, held to that. But now we know we're looking at longer term funding and shorter term funding. We can fund up to 5 years is our longest that we can do, but we can fund anything in between that. The Awards for All is up to 10,000 within a 12-month period. We are over 10,000, and we can do multiple years, and that's up to 5 years. So you can request money for a particular activity. So there is a misconception that we do project funding, and again, that used to be correct. It used to be correct of a lot of funders, but a lot more now are doing project funding, but also core funding, and looking at things that will create a fundamental change. So getting down to the real deep roots of problems. As we've talked about, we can support a single organisation or organisations working together, and that can either be in an equal partnership or where one organisation is a lead partner. Supporting communities and organisations facing increased demands and challenges as a direct result of cost of living. So if somebody has got a grant with us, as Tasha mentioned before, we are doing cost of living increases, and there's very little sort of structure in what we're saying we will fund, we won't fund. But if you can show us that there has been an increase to the budget lines that we're funding, so we can't cover cost of living increase for other grants that you've got. But examples, is an obvious one would be a direct increase in utility costs. So if you have been given a bill that says this is what we're expecting your cost to be in the coming year, that's something you can come to us. You put in £500 for utilities, you're being told it's going to be cost £1,500, then you can come in for that difference. Another one that we're looking at, or we're seeing a lot of people ask for, is around volunteer costs. So quite often volunteers won't claim travel or mileage or any expenses because they see that as their gift to the charity. But then maybe with the cost of living crisis, they're not able to do that anymore. And so we're seeing some of our groups come into us and ask, if we are able to support, those volunteer costs. And, volunteers are so important to the running of so many organisations, then that's certainly something we can look at with groups. And when you're applying, we'd always suggest put those volunteer costs in, encourage your volunteers to take the costs that they are incurring when they're running your project or helping to run your project, and that's really important. They could always donate them back, but then you know how much it's costing to run that project. Yeah, we've covered that for the cost of living, and we're talking it can go on for future years as well. So that's looking at inflationary rises for staff, inflationary rises for the services that you bring in. I think internet Wi-Fi went up by something like 40% for some groups we've talked to, so that can be a significant increase for some groups. So if we just scroll down there a bit more, you can see the funding size there. It says over 10,000 for 5 years. This is where you can apply online. We'll quickly scroll down through there. You can see you can click on a link for the full list of questions. Then there's 2 is a list of, if you wanted to send an email or a video in, the things that you need to put in there for it, and we're asking for videos only to be about 5 minutes long. This is the idea stage. So the way that our applications work now is that you send us your idea, and we'll have a look at that. If it's something that is aligned to what we can fund, then we will invite you to complete a full funding application. So if we go down a bit further and scroll down past all of those, these are the people that you can get in contact with if you've got any questions. Obviously you'll have my email after today, so you could talk to me, but this is just telling you what areas we're in. So Norfolk, you can see, is under London, South East and East of England, so that's the email that you would contact. And then if we scroll down a bit further, what happens after you've told us about your project, you can see there that the 3rd bullet point down, it says if your proposal is something we are interested in, we hope to let you know if it's if we'll be able to progress it further in around 12 weeks. We're not hitting that target at the moment. We have got a very high volume of inquiries, and we've also got some internal staff changes, etc. So we're not hitting that at the moment, but it's what we're aiming for, and at times we get that down considerably lower than that. And the next bullet point is just telling you, if we are able to take it forward. If we're not able to take it forward, we'll let you know why. If we are able to take it forward, then we send you an email that's got all of the information that we would like to see in the full funding proposal. And if we just quickly scroll down to the bottom, you can see there's a bit about capital costs there. And then there's if we go down further, there's a what to expect if we get funding. So it's not a bad idea to have a click through there, see what the expectations on monitoring will be for you. There's a lot of information there, and then you can just ensure that you've got enough time within your project to carry out that sort of monitoring as well. Okay, if we do a quick scroll up to the tabs at the top, so you can see there's 4 tabs. Oh, down a bit, that's it. So these are the 4 main tabs. We've got who can apply, and we'll quickly click on that one. That just runs through the types of organisations who can apply. And if we scroll down, if you're planning on buying a vehicle, it just gives you some information about doing a sort of an analysis about what's the right thing for you. Is a quick list of who we can't accept applications from. And that very last bullet point on that list, it just says there that organisations applying to more than one of our programmes for the same project over the same period, that's something that we can't accept because of the risk of duplicate funding. So that's just a good one to keep in mind. And then the board or committee members, we do require you to have at least 2 people on the board or committee who are not related. And by related, we mean married to each other in civil partnerships, long-term relationships, living together at the same address or related by blood. And that is something that quite a few groups come a cropper with, and it's obviously something that can be changed and amended quite quickly. So if we scoot back up to the other tabs, the projects we can fund. So again, there's some narrative there around the projects that we fund. That's going through pretty much the same information that we went through on the in the pink bit above. It's repeating those 3 key criteria: building strong relationships in and across communities, improving places and spaces, and helping people reach their full potential. And it's saying again there that we are helping people recover from the COVID pandemic. That's still a focus for us. And then if we go down, scroll down through that. So these are really important things to keep in mind, that we're also looking for projects that are people-led. So that's the communities involved, strength-based and connected. And there's just some really good hints and tips there about what we mean by involving the community, giving you some ideas of how you could involve the community, what you might want to ask yourself there. And if we scroll down further, building on people's strengths, again, some questions that you might like to ask yourself. And then connected, and connected is really important to us because we wouldn't want to see duplication, you know, so we're looking for you to reassure that what you're doing is filling a gap in your area. And then if we scroll down a bit further, you can see we're talking about safeguarding there if your project works with children, young people or vulnerable adults. We're also looking at equalities, diversity and inclusion. And it's really important to let us know how you put that into practice. So it's not enough just to know that you've got an equalities policy. We want to know how that's actually brought to life within your project. And there's also a bit there about the environment. And there's a click through there, which we don't need to click through, but it just takes you to a document which is talking about how charities can reflect the environment within their projects. And then if we scroll back up and have a look at the final tab, what you can spend your money on. So again, this is just going through the things that you can spend your money on. It's talking about the direct project costs. It's talking about organisational development. We're very supportive of organisations who are looking to develop themselves. You can see the 3rd bullet point there is making it clear we do cover core costs now. And the 4th point is just going through the lands and buildings. If we scroll down to what we cannot fund, that's just running through the things that you would expect that we can't, nothing for private gain, religious activities, but it's really key to make the point that we can fund religious organisations if their projects benefit the wider community and do not include religious content. What else in there? We can't replace government funding, so we have an additionality clause that we have to look at with all of our funding. Any political or lobbying activities, things that you've spent money on already, that's a really important one. We can't fund anything, and most funders will be like that. And we can't put money into topping up reserves or loan repayments. So that's just good stuff to remember. And I think if we scroll down to the bottom there, that is all. You can see that there's at the bottom of each of those tabs, there's the British Sign Language page. If we go back onto the first tab, we were on the Apply tab. If you scroll down to where there was those email addresses again, these are the teams. If you have got any communication needs, then if you make contact with these teams, then they'll be able to support you with different ways of communicating with us and submitting So that is the quickest I have ever run through the website. It normally takes me a good half hour to go through that. Hopefully you'll see that a lot of the information that was requested in some of those questions is there. We can fund core costs, we can do longer length funding, we can fund up to 5 years. We are funding cost of living crisis specifically, and we can fund the groups, religious groups, as long as the activity is open to all and doesn't have a religious content. So I'm going to stop talking now and see if there's questions.
So there is a question in the chat there, Heidi. I don't know if you can see it from Tab.
From Tab, yes. I've had a really, oh dear, I'm very sorry you've had a very negative experience. But first, they do count, yes. It's maybe not something you want to talk about here, but if you'd like to get in contact with me directly, Tab, then I can have a conversation with you about that. And I'm very sorry that you've had that experience.
Yeah, I will do. Thank you. I'll talk to you personally about it. Thank you.
Yeah, please do. And, you know, contacting that email address, or there is an advice line, you know, if there are any concerns you've had or you've not had a good experience, then please do let us know that. We spend a lot of time each year going through, we have a whole team of people who talk to grant holders, people who are successful, people who are unsuccessful, asking them about their experience with the process. So we do continually try to make it more accessible and, you know, really listen to the feedback. So please do let us know.
I wonder, Heidi, if you could say a bit more about uplifts to existing funds, as some of the people on the call will have funds through you guys already, and others might have similar experiences with other funders. Yeah, so we don't have a limit on how much you can ask, and it really varies. I mean, we work with groups who are, you know, run by volunteers and maybe have an income of 10,000 a year, to really large charities as well. So it's very hard for us to give any sort of specific guidance on it, but what we're looking for is for you to tell us how your costs have increased, and that might be, I mean, certainly going back through COVID, people maybe weren't able to do fundraising, so they maybe did face-to-face fundraising events, and that's maybe not picked back up still. They're finding it hard to do, or they're finding that people just can't, you know, they've maybe got out of the habit, and with the cost of living crisis, they're not coming back to attend things. Not so much, but some people are finding that donations are tailing off as well. So if you can evidence, you know, the reasons for why your income has fallen in that way, then that's something that we can try and look to support. We would also want to see that you know, you've considered you know, what tightening of the belt needs to be done, but we understand that that can't be done for everything. So that is one thing we can look at. We talked about utilities. There are some things like that which are very clear costs, clear increases in costs, and then there are the other things like the volunteering costs, and it's a lot of volunteers are tired and worn out. You know, is there extra costs that are required to help support them, to keep them going? It might be, I just thought of something else and it's completely gone now. What was it? It was another one that was coming. It might be that you need to expand your services. That was it. So it might be that you had you know, one person answering calls about debt, but now you need a second person, and so it's a budget line you had, but you need to sort of like double it,
or it might be like I was talking about the volunteer costs, it's a new budget line. So it's not a budget line for somebody else's grant. It's related to the grant that we've given you, but it's not actually a budget line we've had before. So it's just about talking to us. We like to try and we're a local team. We're supposed to get to know our grant holders and what's going on in the area. There might be very specific things within your area, your areas. Open that conversation with us. We are rather than having applications now, we are a sort of a conversational approach. So even if you do apply via the website, we can still have those conversations with you.
Thank you, Heidi. We've got a couple of questions now in the chat. Amanda has said, hello Heidi, the RC guidance includes extensive info on evaluation tools which might be used, but could this be part of the proposed project that service users are supported to develop a tool that they're comfortable in using?
Yes, it can be. If it was reinventing the wheel, then we probably wouldn't be up for that, but absolutely. I mean, there was one project that we were talking about this with recently, and it was a project to support people who were lonely, and they had looked up and looked at tools which measured, you know, sort of at the start you ask somebody to fill the questionnaire out about how lonely they were, and then at the end, you know, after they'd been coming to you for several months, you would fill the tool out. And they did it for the first couple of sessions, and they just went, we can't carry on doing this. We can't ask someone who turns up here who's lonely, how lonely are you? So, you know, it's a learning curve. Absolutely, we understand that things need to be developed. So if there isn't anything out there that you think is suitable, then yeah, we can support that. We support groups with buying in expertise to do evaluations. And that might be another organisation who's done something similar and you're just buying for some of their time, or it might be a consultant that you're buying in. So yeah, there's definitely something. Evaluation is something we're keen on groups really getting that support if they haven't got the articulation around what they need to. And also if groups are looking for the longer term of how are they going to get funded? How are they going to get funded after the end of this? So people might be looking at trying to talk with the NHS about getting funding for things like that. So it's always good to talk to those people, have those conversations really early on, understand what they're looking for, what is the difference that they would fund, and how can you actually evidence that your projects are creating that difference that they're looking to make. Yeah.
Thank you, Heidi. We've got another question as well. What is the average funding amount, and is there an ideal amount to apply for to increase chances of success?
No, there isn't. There isn't an average amount of funding. I mean, obviously we can calculate an average, but that it has no meaning. We have taken grants through for £25,000 over 2 years, and we've just done a over £1 million application. So it really is, yeah, there isn't an average, and it doesn't increase your chances of success. I'd probably spend more time suggesting that people add things into their budget than asking them to take things out. But we can have a conversation. It's not like once you've submitted the application, that's locked in. We have conversations with people. Budgets certainly change and amounts change from the idea stage where you submit it through the website through to the full funding proposal stage. So we know that things are going to change when you start getting into the nitty-gritty. We have looked at projects where we have thought, you know, a year isn't enough to do what they want to do, so we've suggested they go for 2 years. We've looked at projects which are saying they want 5 years and said we don't understand why you need 5 years to do this. So it's really down to individual projects. So ask the really key thing that I would ask everybody to think, and that's not just for our funders, for any funders, ask for what you want, ask for what you need, because if you are making it up or padding it, or you're not clear, then that's going to come through in the application. So just be clear with ask for what you want, what you need, and why you need those things. So sometimes it might be something that we would push back and say, you know, how do you need this? Why do you want this much money? And groups will come back with a really clear reason for why they want it, and we can accept that. What are we on now?
I think you've got all the ones in the chat so far, Heidi. Yeah, Scott asked a follow-up question, but actually you've answered that in what you were talking about. I'm just looking back at some of the questions that were asked when people booked, and can
I just, there's two further questions that I can see, and there's one from Adam. I always
I missed them.
Well, no, I think you're saying I've answered them. I'm just checking. Yeah, so it's the strength of the project. Yes, Adam, I agree with that. And then user has asked, thanks. Point being, if I budget for a project at 100k and budget for a similar project but research, which would be more likely to fund it? Yeah, I have kind of answered that one. It really would come down to which it looked like, which you've got the evidence for, the need for, which one looks like it's good value for money. So I'd ask for what you need, what you want. You know, why would you be asking for 100,000? Why would you be asking for the 50,000? Yeah, it's trying to second guess is it's not, it's, yeah, that's a crystal ball.
Yeah. So there was a couple of mentions in the bookings where people have talked about it being an extra competitive market in like the cost of living crisis. And is there anything they can do to make their applications stand out? Obviously that's a hard one to answer, I imagine, but have you got any tips on that, Heidi?
I have at the end, Tasha is going to send out a top 10 reasons why applications fail. A lot of those points we've already covered off, and it is really have a look at that material that people, whoever you're applying to funding for, they've spent a lot of time, we spend a lot of time on the wording and testing out the wording with potential grant holders on our website and on the documents that we send out if we invite you through to full funding proposal. So have a look at them. If you don't understand something, then either make contact with that email address or whoever's sent you the full funding proposal application, ask them to clarify the questions, and then answer all of the questions. I received one application back this week, and I would say over a third of the questions hadn't been answered, and I have to assess on those. So there's just gaps in the assessment. So I then have to contact and chase, and it can just drag out and take quite a long time. So answer those, have a look at what they're asking for. So it's if they're asking for places and spaces that if one of the criteria, and it's the one you've chosen, is places and spaces, then when you're asked for what difference your project will make, then give criteria, give the targets that you're going to work towards that reflect that places and spaces. And remember that I'm sure that everybody on the call will know the difference between outputs and outcomes. So an output is something that you do and the outcome is the difference that will make. So we're interested in the quantity, but we're really interested in the difference that that's going to make to groups. So for example, you might be putting on a coffee morning and you're going to put that on every Friday and you're expecting to get 30 people. So that's good. We know how many people you're looking at reaching, but what difference is that coffee morning going to make to those 30 people? And some projects, you know, are going to reach 1,000 people and they're going to have a little bit of difference. And some projects will reach 10 people but have a huge amount of difference. So that's down to each individual project and what's there. But what we're really interested in is that difference that it's going to make, the impact that it's going to make. I made a couple of notes while I'm looking over here, because I've got another screen over here. One thing is check your public profile as well. So when you submit an application to us, we have the ability to call up. So if we can't find you, we can call you up because we're a conversational funder. If you're using an application form, then the only way that they can find out anything about you is by seeing what profile you've got in the public. So if you're a charity, that will be the Charity Commission. If you're a company, Companies House, that might be on social media. But check that you, and I'm saying this because there's 3 groups that I've checked this week. They had a different senior contact and they had a different address on Charities House to what they'd submitted to us. So immediately, you know, there's a confusion there that we've got to clear up. So that's something, if you're applying for funding, and just in general, it's good governance to make sure that all of the information that's out there about you is accurate and up to date. We've talked about the difference you'll make, because that's what the funder's giving you the money for. So another example is if you're asking for a vehicle, we're not giving you the money so that you can have a vehicle. We're giving you the money for what that vehicle can do. So tell us about what that vehicle will do and you know, how people will benefit from what that vehicle can do. And you'll be surprised at how many people just tell us about the vehicle. Ensure that your budget reflects the project. So if you're saying that you are going to, so again, it's an arts project that I had in this week, and they said it was going to build community, but their budget line had lots of budget lines for arts things, for buying in arts directors, for buying in costumes, for music, but it didn't have a single line for any community cohesion work or community development work. So the project just didn't ring true. It sounded like they'd put a couple of keywords in that they thought we wanted to hear, community cohesion, and submitted it to us, but their budget just didn't align to what they said that they were, the difference they were going to make with it. So that's really key. And for that, you probably need to put in whatever match funding or in-kind funding that you've got there. So if you don't need to ask for money for insurance because your charity's insurance can cover it, then put that in. It doesn't necessarily need to be in as a budget line, but it will be in your comments somewhere, just so when somebody's assessing it, they can think, oh, okay, they know they need insurance and they've got it. They haven't forgotten to put that in as a budget line. So that's a really important one. And match funding, let us know, is it secure? Is it something that you're looking for? So if you're coming in for 50% of the funds, then that's absolutely brilliant if you've got the other 50% secured, or if you've got 45% secured, and you have a really well-established fundraising thing, which you know that you're going to be able to get that other 5%. If you come into us for 50% of a project because you think we like to see match funding, we do. It shows, you know, particularly as we're a community funder, if you're coming in for a play park, then if your community has got together and started fundraising for that play park, then that indicates to us straight away that there's a lot of support within your community for the play park. But if you come in and it's like, oh yeah, we're only asking you for 50% of the costs, and then you don't tell us where that other 50% is coming from, then we wonder how you're going to raise the rest of that money. And also, if you just don't tell us that there's that other money to come in, we might just think that there's not enough money in the budget to do what you're looking to do. So just tell us about the whole project, tell us what you're asking from us, tell us where you're going to get the rest of the money from. It doesn't all have to be in place before we will agree to fund, but it's just telling us that you've got that track record to be able to raise the rest of the money, giving us that confidence. And then be honest and open, address any issues or points that you think may be a concern in your application. So sometimes we have charities that have maybe not got a great history on the Charity Commission website. They've submitted their documents late, so the governance doesn't look that strong. But if they've had a complete change of trustees and they're all over their governance now, if they just, you know, face that up and say that in the application, then that's obviously going to be a lot better than us looking on the Charity Commission website and thinking, oh, you know, they've got some governance issues here, not getting things on time.
Thanks, Heidi. Just looking through the responses people sent earlier, I did notice a theme about language, and a couple of people had mentioned they were sort of worried about how to write those applications. What would you say to that?
So I think we've already covered there aren't any buzzwords. So this arts application that I saw, they had community cohesion in, but it, you know, it was in there, it was just a buzzword, it wasn't part of the project, it wasn't built into the project, so that was quite transparent. So again, I'd say ask for what you want. Now we are a conversational funder, then, you know, we'd really say try not to get too hung up on the wording and the presentation. Obviously we need to be able to understand it, but if you tell us about what you're doing, then we will hopefully be able to, you know, see it. We don't have a list of buzzwords that we're looking off. We're not playing bingo or anything with those words. It's just tell us what you're doing. If we're not clear, then we have the opportunity to contact you and to ask for that clarification. Use the words which are you know, are the words that you use. One of those things on things we don't fund is we don't fund things, costs that have already gone, and we don't fund people who are applying on behalf of another organisation, and that's really referring to fund bid writers. We can normally tell if a bid writer has written an application. We don't feel, because of all that time and effort we put into trying to make our website easy and accessible and user friendly, we don't feel that a bid writer is required. We can have those conversations. We have a call line, we have the email. You can ask for a pre-application phone call with us, and you know, we can talk about the idea. We can come back to you if you haven't answered a question in the way that we you know, we're expecting it to be answered. We can come back. So try not to get hung up on the words, and I think that would be, you know, we can tell a bid writer if it's all singing or dancing, but it is normally missing the bit that we're really interested in, which is what's actually going to happen on the ground. So it's the same with main contacts. We've actually made it a policy now that bid writers can't be a main contact, because they rarely have the answers to the questions that we really want to know. So we want to talk to somebody who's going to be involved in the delivery of the project. The same as a lot of groups will put the CEO on as the main contact because they think they're the best salesperson for the group, but often, you know, they're not on they don't understand the project and the delivery as well as the people who are delivering it. So we'd always say you can have your CEO there as well, but it's much better for your main contact to be the person, you know, the people who are actually delivering. It's you know, what we want to understand is just what's going on at the difference. We're not marking, you know, spellings and presentation.
Thanks, Heidi. That's really useful to know. So we've got just under 10 minutes left. I wondered if you could say a bit about what you see the future, the near future of the funding landscape to be. That's not too difficult a question.
Well, it is quite a difficult question. So we've got a strategy renewal, which I don't know whether people have seen, but there was a lot of inviting of people to come in. So we're expecting changes with that. We don't know what they are. We haven't been briefed on them internally yet. We are expecting potentially a different focus, a closer focus on cost of living, and yeah, we are hoping, obviously, as the local team, that the benefit of having somebody available to talk to you know, groups individually and help them through the process and be available to answer questions. We've had a lot of really positive feedback from groups, particularly some of the groups who maybe feel that they're furthest from being able to you know, engage with our grants. They maybe think it all looks a bit shiny and a bit corporate, and they don't feel how they can get in there, you know, being able to talk to somebody about a project. We still have to go through certain processes, but you know, being able to talk to people about that is very helpful. So we're hoping that that will continue, and that potentially even more resources will be put into that. There was a question that came in about the length of time that it takes for an application process start to finish, and it is just down to volume. So you know, on our behalf, I want to say, you know, considering it used to take sort of 9 to 12 months at least when it was application forms, we are down to sort of a 6 to 9 months now with the way that we do it, and we look to try and get it in, you know, to turn it around a lot quicker. We've just had, like a lot of people in the charity and voluntary sector, we've had quite a lot of churn ourselves with people leaving. And so you're bringing new people in, training people up. We've got capacity issues as well. So we're working as hard as we can. If people contact us and they tell us that they've got an urgent need, then we are able to try and flex and bring things forward. Otherwise, we try and do it on a sort of who came in first basis. And the length of time that people take to return the full funding proposals really differs. Some people get it back to you the next week, and you know, we've had people take 9 months to complete those before, for various reasons, whether it's stuff going on within the organisation, or you know, whatever those reasons are. So yeah, we are working very hard to keep that as and we're continually, you know, looking at our own internal processes. As I said, there's going to be a big change coming through this year, I think.
Brilliant, thank you, Heidi. Does anyone have any final questions? Oh, Kevin.
Yes, really interesting. This is, and I've got a question which is not necessarily related to cost of living, but I'm working with a charity which has been running for about 18 months. It's actually a CIC, and we are now converting it to be a charity for a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons being funding. So we're literally doing the conversion tonight. We're going to be filling the form in. So when can I apply as a charity, when it becomes a charity, for funding? Given that I won't have a charity number yet, and I won't have a bank account yet, but I will do. When can I still put an application in now, even though those items which you need?
Yes, I would think you can. I don't think, I'm trying to think if we've come across that, but you would need to have those things in place. I know that we've had people who've been setting up as CIOs, and we've taken them through the idea stage and invited to full funding proposal. we just needed them to be completed prior to setting up, so there was a legal entity to sign the contract. But yeah, I think you'd be able to, and you can use, if it's a direct transfer between, then you can use the history of the CIC as the evidence of, you know, ability and what you've been doing before.
Okay, that's really good, because obviously I've got a company number already and we have a bank account, but as I understand it, we won't be able to use the CIC bank account. It will almost certainly change details.
Yes, I would imagine you would change details with that. So it might be best if you're applying to us, to the community fund on the website, to not apply as the CIC, but to apply as the CIO. But just make the comment that you're going through the process and it's not established yet. Yeah,
I mean, we should be sort of a short time away, but I didn't want to wait for, you know, months, then apply, because as you said, you can't fund historical expenditure, but we're now going to go through expenditure, which I'd like to cover, you know, as we get going. No, brilliant. That really helps. I know what I'm doing tonight now. Thank you.
Thank you. I can see a few people are saying they've got to duck out. So thank you very much for coming. And I believe you will be given my email address. So do get in touch, particularly Tab. And I hope that you all appreciate the top 10 reasons that funding applications fail. And that's not specific to the community fund. That is just a general really good tick list to go through.
Thank you. Thanks, Heidi. So I will send that out to everyone along with Heidi's email address. There's also a quick survey which I'll just post in the chat now, but I will send in the email as well. So that's just to give us a couple of minutes, just to give us a bit of feedback on the session. And thank you all so much for sparing the time to come. Please do check out our other cost of living events if you want to be part of more conversations like this. We've got one next week, which is on marketing and branding and getting your message out to the right people in light of the cost of living crisis. So that could be reaching out to donors, potential volunteers, as well as funders. And that's with Bricks Brand, who are a marketing and creative agency specifically for voluntary organisations. They're a social enterprise themselves, so they understand how that all works. So that's going to be great. That's next Thursday, and the details of that will be on Eventbrite or on the emails where you found the link to this one. But if anyone's unsure, just get in touch and I'll send you the link. And thank you very much, Heidi. That was really, really useful, really interesting. And yeah, I'll get those documents over to you and Heidi's contact details so you can follow up with her if you want to. Thank you all.